15%.
Yeah. It's the kind of number that makes you stop scrolling.
Yeah.
Right? You just have to check if there's a typo in the headline.
It really is. 15% annual GDP growth. President Trump dropped this figure on Fox Business recently, and I think you could practically hear the collective jaw of the financial world hit the floor.
Oh, absolutely.
We are so conditioned to think of 2%, maybe 3% growth as a boom year. But 15, I mean, that sounds impossible. It sounds like a fever dream.
It sounds like science fiction. And, historically speaking, it is. The long-term average for a mature economy like the U.S. is,
Right.
It's right around 2.8%.
Right.
So when a president comes out and suggests a number that is nearly 6 times that average, the immediate reaction from any serious economist is skepticism. And frankly, if you look at the traditional models, labor plus capital plus productivity, that skepticism is completely warranted.
But, and this is why we are here today, we aren't here to just dismiss it out of hand. We are here to unpack the mechanics behind that massive claim. Because when you actually dig into the source material, the documents, the white papers, what they're calling the sovereign playbook, you realize this isn't just about working harder.
No.
It isn't about tax cuts or, tweaking interest rates a quarter point here or there.
No, it is a fundamental architectural shift.
Yeah.
It's not an acceleration of the current system. It's a total redesign of the engine itself, a phase change.
So that's what we're doing today. We're unpacking this sovereign playbook. It's a strategy that moves the entire battle for AI supremacy from the terrestrial grid, where, as we are about to discuss, we are hitting some very serious physical walls.
Big time.
To what they call the ultimate high ground of space. And maybe even more radically, it involved anchoring our entire national solvency, not in gold, not in tax receipts, but in a strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Satoshi.
And I'm Satoshi.
It is a fascinating and incredibly high-stakes combination of orbital mechanics and monetary theory. It's like Star Wars meets hard money.
So buckle up. We are investigating what's being framed as a civilizational upgrade. We're looking at a shift from the era of liquid gold, where power was oil and banking, to digital steam. We're looking at how the administration plans to escape the debt-to-GDP trap, and let's be honest, that trap is terrifying.
It's mathematically unsustainable.
We are at a point where the interest payments on the national debt now exceed what we spend on Medicaid. Just think about that for a second.
You can't keep that up. And so the proposed solution in these documents is to shift the entire metric, shifting from a debt-to-GDP standard to a debt-to-GBT standard.
GPT.
Gross Bitcoin held.
Okay, that is a phrase we are going to have to spend some serious time on later in this deep dive. But the summary is, we are talking about a $40 trillion expansionary cycle.
A massive cycle.
Using fiat currency as pure leverage to build orbital AI constellations, all while protecting the national balance sheet in what they're calling a digital Fort Knox.
It's complicated, and if it works, it completely changes the definition of what a nation actually is in the 21st century.
So let's dive in. I want to start with the problem, because before we get to the space lasers and the Bitcoin vaults, we have to understand why the current system is breaking. You labeled this section of our research the electron gap.
That's right, because this is the geopolitical stakes of our time, really, in a nutshell.
We often hear about the chip war, right? The idea that whoever makes the best AI chips wins. We blocked the export of the H100s to China. We're building fabs in Arizona. We feel like we are winning that war.
And we are, to be clear, we are winning the Silicon War. We have the designs, we have the IP. But, you can have the fastest Ferrari in the world sitting in your driveway, polished and ready to go. But if you don't have gas...
It's just a lawn ornament, a very expensive lawn ornament.
Precisely. It doesn't go anywhere. And in this analogy, the gas is electricity.
Physical juice.
Physical juice.
Yeah.
Electrons. And this is where the United States has a massive, glaring vulnerability that, frankly, almost nobody is talking about.
This is where the sources get really sobering. We're looking at a situation where China is generating more than twice the electricity of the United States.
Twice the electricity. And it's not just the current amount. It's the rate of acceleration that is truly alarming. I want to drill down on a specific data point from 2024 because it really highlights the scale of the problem.
Okay.
In that single year, 2024, China added 543 gigawatts of power capacity.
So can we just pause on that number? 543 gigawatts. I feel like my brain glosses over gigawatts because of Back to the Future,
Mm-hmm.
But contextually, is that a lot?
Yeah.
Is it a lot? Let me try to put that in perspective for you. 543 gigawatts exceeds the total power capacity added by the United States in its entire history.
Hold on. Run that by me again. In 1 year,
In one single year.
they built more power generation capacity than we have in, what, 2 centuries?
Essentially, yes, they built an entire Europe worth of power generation in 12 months.
That's terrifying.
It's a staggering divergence in industrial capacity,
Yeah.
a phase shift. And if we project this forward, by 2030, China is expected to have 400 gigawatts of spare power capacity.
Spare, as in unused.
Unused. That is triple the expected demand of the entire global data center fleet at that time. They will have a surplus of power that literally dwarfs the entire world's needs for AI.
Meanwhile, back home, we are hitting a wall. A very real physical wall.
We are. A modern AI data center is a beast. We aren't talking about a room with a few servers anymore. The next generation of training runs, the stuff that comes after GPT-6 or whatever is next, requires gigawatt-scale facilities.
A gigawatt, that's 1 billion watts.
It is. It's enough electricity to power a city the size of, say, San Francisco or maybe Austin.
So if Google or xAI or Anthropic wants to build a new AI brain, they effectively have to plug a new major American city into the grid.
Exactly. And when you try to plug a small city into the existing U.S. grid, you break things. The transformers blow. The transmission lines literally melt. The grid just isn't built for that kind of concentrated load.
And even if the physics work, the politics don't. You get rising utility bills for everyone else on the grid. You get brownouts. You get public backlash. I mean, nobody wants their electricity bill to double just so a tech giant can train a chatbot.
Nobody.
Yeah.
And that's before you even get to the bureaucracy. In the U.S., large-scale energy projects are often delayed for years. We have the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. We have local zoning boards. We have litigation from every possible angle.
Right.
If you want to build a major transmission line in America, it can take a decade, a full decade. In China, if the party says build the dam is there 6 months later. The ground is already cleared.
So if AI supremacy is the new projection of sovereign power, if it's replacing naval fleets, as the sources suggest, we are losing the engine room battle. Badly.
We are losing the physical battle. We have the mind, the chips, but we don't have the body, the power. If the U.S. tries to compete on the terrestrial grid, we will either bankrupt ratepayers or we will hit a regulatory wall that stops us dead. There's no other path.
Which leads us to the pivot, the big idea. If Earth is too crowded, too regulated, and too power constrained, you go up.
You go to the ultimate high ground.
This is the phase change. You stop fighting the gravity, both literal and political, of the terrestrial grid, and you move the compute infrastructure to orbit.
Exactly. You change the game.
I love this concept, even though it sounds like something straight out of a comic book. The sources describe an orbital data center as a nuclear submarine of the mind.
It's a powerful analogy, isn't it? Think about a nuclear submarine for a second. Why do we build them? What makes them so strategic?
Well, they can stay submerged for months on end. They don't need to refuel. They're stealthy, hard to track.
Right. But crucially, they operate independently. A U.S. nuclear sub in the Pacific doesn't care if the power grid in California goes down. It doesn't care if there's a protest in Washington. It is a self-contained, sovereign island of power and protection.
And now apply that same logic to a data center.
Exactly. You put the data center in orbit, it operates above borders, it's immune to a blackout in Texas or a brownout in Northern Virginia, which is where most of our data centers are. It's immune to local zoning boards. No city council can vote it down.
But this isn't just a theory, right? I mean, this is the core strategic rationale behind the reported merger of SpaceX and xAI.
That's right. Bloomberg reported that SpaceX acquired xAI, and the valuation of that combined entity is around $1.25 trillion. Musk calls it the most ambitious, vertically integrated innovation engine on Earth and beyond. The plan is just massive, a constellation of 1 million satellites.
1 million. Just the number itself implies a scale that we haven't seen since the Liberty ships of World War II.
It's industrial terraforming, essentially. And they are very explicit about this. They frame this as a step toward a Kardashev Type 2 civilization.
Okay, for the listener who hasn't brushed up on their Russian astrophysics lately, you've got to remind us what the Kardashev scale is.
Sure. Nikolai Kardashev proposed this back in the 1960s. It's a way of measuring a civilization's technological advancement based purely on the amount of energy it's able to use.
Oh.
A Type I civilization uses all the energy available on its home planet. So all the wind, solar, fossil fuels, geothermal, everything.
And we aren't even there yet, right? Carl Sagan put us somewhere.
We are about a 0.7 on the scale. But a Type 2 Civilization. That's a whole different level. A Type 2 harnesses the full energy output of its star,
The entire sun.
the entire sun. So, by moving our primary compute infrastructure into space to harvest solar energy directly, we're effectively taking the first concrete step toward becoming a stellar civilization. It's a huge leap.
It sounds incredibly sci-fi, but let's get into the physics, because there's a real hard-nosed engineering reason they want to do this. And it's not just because it sounds cool, it's all about efficiency.
It's pure thermodynamics and optics.
Yeah.
On Earth, solar power is fine, it's good, but it's fundamentally limited. You have night, you have clouds, you have the atmosphere itself scattering the light before it even hits the panel.
Right. My solar panels at home don't do a whole lot at midnight or, during a thunderstorm.
Exactly. But the proposal here relies on a very specific orbital path. It's called a sun-synchronous orbit.
Explain that. What is that?
Okay, so imagine the Earth spinning on its axis. There is a line that divides day and night. It's called the terminator line.
Okay.
If you launch a satellite into a polar orbit that rides exactly along that line, you're effectively chasing the sunset forever. Your satellite is in perpetual noon.
So the solar panels never go dark. Not for a second.
Never. 247 unencumbered, unfiltered sunlight. The sources claim that solar panels in this specific orbit are up to 8 times more productive than the exact same panels on the ground on Earth.
8 times. That's a massive multiplier. That's a game changer.
It changes the economics completely. But then there's the other side of the coin for any data center, cooling.
Right. We mentioned earlier that terrestrial data centers are boiling local rivers, essentially. They use millions of gallons of water.
It's a huge environmental cost and a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
But in space, you have a vacuum.
No, I've got to play the skeptic here for a second. My intuition says a vacuum is like a thermos, right? It's an insulator. It keeps heat in. If there is no air to blow over the chips, how do you cool them down without them melting into a puddle?
That's the intuitive thought, and it's a good question. But the physics works differently up there. You don't use convection, you use radiation.
Yeah.
You build these massive radiator panels that take the heat from the chips.
Oh, okay.
And they radiate it as infrared light directly into deep space.
Into the void.
Directly into the void, which is approaching absolute zero. So instead of trying to cool a hot chip with 70-degree air or lukewarm water, you are dumping that heat into a sink that is minus 450 degrees Fahrenheit. It is infinitely efficient as long as you build the radiators big enough.
So you solve the power generation problem with perpetual sun, and you solve the cooling problem with the infinite cold of space.
And this is the kicker. You solve the political problem at the same time.
Here's where it gets really interesting for the strategy nerds in the audience. This isn't just an engineering play. This is a green political play.
It really is. Think about the friction we discussed earlier. If you build these gigawatt data centers on Earth, environmentalists hate it because of the water and power usage. Regular people hate it because their bills go up. But if you move it all to space,
It's clean, it's off-planet, it's out of sight, out of mind.
it's invisible. It moves the entire energy strain off the domestic grid completely. You're using solar energy in a vacuum. It captures green political capital while simultaneously securing American dominance. The sources mention polling that shows 70% of Republican-aligned voters support American-made solar if it decouples us from China. This cuts across party lines beautifully.
And you bypass all the local zoning boards. You're dealing with the FAA and the FCC for launch approval, which, while not easy, I'm sure, is a lot faster than getting approval from 1,000 different city councils and county commissions.
It centralizes the regulatory process. It's a brilliant end run around the entire terrestrial bottleneck. It's elegant.
But, and there is always a but, the cost. We have to talk about the cost, because getting 1 million satellites into space isn't like ordering a pizza.
No. It requires an industrial mobilization on a scale that we haven't seen since arguably World War II.
The sources call it a soup-to-nuts approach, fully vertically integrated.
Right. And this is where Elon Musk's whole ecosystem becomes the critical national asset. You have SpaceX for the launch, you have Tesla for the batteries, the robotics, the solar tech, you have xAI for the compute itself. You even have the Optimus robots.
The robots.
Yeah, which the sources suggest could be used for building and servicing these data centers in orbit.
A robot workforce in space. I mean, come on, it sounds like Asimov.
It sounds wild, but think about the environment up there. It's incredibly hostile. High radiation, micrometeoroids, extreme temperature swings. You weren't sending astronauts up there with screwdrivers to fix a loose cable. You need hardened automation.
So let's talk numbers, because this is where the 15% growth claim starts to face the cold, hard reality of the budget. The sources estimate that building 100 gigawatts of capacity in space annually would cost, wait for it, $4 to $5 trillion per year.
That is roughly 1/6 of the entire U.S. GDP.
Okay.
Every year, it is an astronomical sum of money.
And the launch cadence required for that, we are talking about 3,300 launches annually.
Do the math on that. That's 9 launches a day. Every single day. A constant stream of rockets going to orbit.
And not just any rocket. We're talking about Starship, the biggest rocket ever built. To sustain that cadence, they would need to build at least 30 new Starships every single year. And that's assuming they are reusable 100 times each, which is still theoretical.
It effectively requires a wartime economy. But instead of building tanks and planes, we are building solar panels, satellite buses, and optical comms modules at a scale nobody's ever attempted.
And it's not a one-and-done deal.
No, and that's a key point. The sources describe a mandatory 5-year replacement cycle for these satellites because space is so hostile. The radiation degrades the chips over time. Micrometeoroids hit the panels. So it's not just build it once. It's a constant churning factory of orbital infrastructure.
It's a factory-style deployment, a conveyor belt to the stars. You know, talking about this scale, it really makes you appreciate the need for deep research. We started the show with a simple idea that there are people out there like you listening right now who want to go beyond the headlines, who want to know how the engine works, not just that the car is moving.
It's true. We've seen such an amazing response.
Yeah.
It's really clear that there is a hunger for this kind of rigorous analytical deep dive. It's not the kind of thing you get in a 30-second soundbite or...
Absolutely. And we want to keep doing this. We want to do more. We have big plans to start creating high-quality videos to accompany these discussions. We're trying to unlock funding for the Mosaic AI video editor, which would be a complete game changer for us.
But we can't do it alone.
So if you are enjoying this conversation, if you're getting value from this deep dive, please just take a second. Subscribe on YouTube, YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Fountain.fm- whatever podcast 2.0 app you use. It makes a huge difference.
And for those of you who really want to get into the weeds of the financial side, the Bitcoin aspect that we were about to really dig into, we have actually created a course on YouTube.
That's right. It covers all the nuances of the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the future of the digital asset economy. We really see Bitcoin as the fundamental solution to these massive problems of debt and global competition, and the course breaks that down in detail. We'll put a link in the description. We highly recommend you check it out.
Now, speaking of funding, we just dropped a number, $5 trillion a year, or, in the broader cycle, a $40 trillion expansion.
Yeah. The elephant in the room. How on earth do you pay for that? Because if you just print $40 trillion in the current system, you don't get a space empire, you get hyperinflation, you turn the dollar into confetti.
Exactly. You cannot build a Type 2 civilization using Type I money. It just doesn't work. And this brings us to the second, and maybe even more radical, half of the sovereign playbook. You need a new equation.
The sources lay out this new equation very clearly. Fiat equals leverage. Gold plus Bitcoin equals value.
This is the core shift. Traditionally, we look at debt to GDP. GDP is basically a measure of taxable velocity. It's how fast money moves around so the government can skim some off the top in taxes to pay off the debt.
But that engine has stalled out. It's broken.
It has. The velocity engine is broken. We have $841 billion in annual interest payments alone. That's more than the entire Medicaid budget. You literally cannot tax your way out of that hole. If you taxed every single billionaire in America at 100%, it wouldn't even fix the annual deficit, let alone the debt.
So the proposal is to change the denominator, to move from debt to GDP to debt to GBT.
Gross Bitcoin held.
Walk me through the mechanics here. How does holding Bitcoin on the national balance sheet allow you to print $5 trillion without destroying the entire economy?
Okay, think of the U.S. government like a massive hedge fund. Right now, that fund is short. The dollar, we owe trillions and trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
If we print more, our liability just gets worse.
Right, we're digging the hole deeper.
Exactly. But what if that hedge fund takes a massive long position in the scarcest asset in the known universe?
Okay, so step 1, buy the Bitcoin. Step 2, print the $5 trillion for the space program.
Precisely. Now watch the mechanism. When they print the $5 trillion to build the rockets and the satellites, that causes inflation in the dollar. Right? The dollar weakens. But what happens to Bitcoin when the dollar weakens?
The coin goes up.
It goes up aggressively. It is a distinct, non-sovereign store of value. So the very inflation that hurts the currency helps the balance sheet because the asset side, the Bitcoin, appreciates faster than the debt side creates drag.
It's a hedge. It's a national scale hedge. You are using the inflation you are forced to create to pump the value of the asset you hold.
They call it financial jujitsu. You are using the weight of your own expansionary spending to drive the value of your reserves through the roof. It allows you to recapitalize the entire nation through asset appreciation rather than just trying to extract more taxes from citizens and businesses.
So you shift the entire model. You move from a model based on taxing velocity, which is GDP, to a model based on asset appreciation, which is GBT.
Precisely. And it relies on a massive multiplier effect from the spending itself. The American Society of Civil Engineers estimates that every $1 billion spent on infrastructure adds $3 billion to GDP.
And that's for regular infrastructure, like roads and bridges. When you add AI into the mix,
It's like pouring gasoline on the fire. The sources cite modeling that says AI augmentation, it compresses 10 years of industrial progress into a single cycle.
and that's how they get there.
That's how they claim to reach that 15% growth target. It's the combination of the massive physical infrastructure spending, the monetary plasma of AI productivity, all of it anchored by a national balance sheet that actually gets richer the more money you print.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here because the question is obvious. Why Bitcoin? If you want a hard asset to back your currency, why not just use gold? We have Fort Knox. We have the history. Gold is the classic time-tested standard.
This is one of the most fascinating and, I think, most critical parts of the analysis and the sources. They call gold a rival wealth trap. Look at the numbers. It's very hard for one government, even the U.S., to really move the needle on the price in a dramatic way. But more importantly, you have to look at who owns the gold.
China and India.
China and India hold massive, and I mean massive, private reserves. Indian households are estimated to hold something like 34,600 tons of gold. Chinese households hold around 31,000 tons.
So if the U.S. decides to remonetize gold, if we start buying it up and driving the price to the moon to back our debt,
We are effectively signing a massive check to Beijing and New Delhi. We would be recapitalizing our primary strategic rivals. We would be transferring trillions of dollars of wealth directly to them.
that is a strategic nightmare. You'd be funding the very people you are trying to outcompete in space and in AI.
It is. It's a non-starter.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin is different.
It has a fixed DNA, 21 million coins. That's it. No more can ever be created, ever.
And because it's still relatively young and small compared to the gold market, it's highly sensitive to sovereign buying pressure. If the U.S. government starts buying, the price moves asymmetrically to the upside.
And the U.S. can get a first mover advantage.
Exactly. This is the key. We can front-run our rivals. We can accumulate a dominant position in this new digital native asset before China or India or Russia can catch up. We secure the digital Fort Knox for ourselves while they're still holding heavy, physical rocks that are hard to move and easy to seize.
It's utilizing digital scarcity as a weapon of economic sovereignty. It's a geopolitical move.
It is. It's utilizing the game theory of Bitcoin on a global scale. If the U.S. moves first, everyone else has to follow, but they will be forced to buy in at a much, much higher price.
But let's bring this down to earth for a minute, or I guess back to the kitchen table. Because $40 trillion, orbital lasers, Bitcoin reserves, it all sounds great for the government and the tech billionaires, but what about the regular person? Usually when the government prints this much money, the little guy gets absolutely crushed.
This is where the social contract part of the playbook comes in. We have to talk about the Cantillon effect.
Cantillon effect, right. Unpack that for us.
It's an economic observation from the 18th century, but it's more relevant now than ever. It basically says that when new money is printed, it doesn't get distributed evenly throughout the economy.
No.
The people closest to the money printer, so the government, the big banks, the large industrial contractors, they get the money first.
So in this case, it would be SpaceX, Tesla, the defense contractors building the satellites.
Right. They get the new money while it still has its full purchasing power. They use it to buy raw materials, they hire people. But as that new money circulates through the economy, prices start to rise. By the time that money trickles down to the wage earner, the teacher, the plumber, the nurse, prices for gas and groceries have already gone up.
Inflation has already set in, so the rich get the full value and the poor get the inflation.
Exactly. That is the unfortunate history of fiat currency for the last century. The rich get richer because they own the assets that inflate, and the poor get expensive groceries.
So, if we are printing $40 trillion to build space data centers, the industrial giants are going to do very, very well. How does the administration propose to protect the rest of us from that Cantillon effect?
The solution proposed in the playbook is what they call an asset economy for the masses.
And this brings us back to that very direct populist phrase from the Nashville conference, never sell your Bitcoin.
That's the core of it. The idea is to dramatically reduce the friction of owning hard assets.
Mhm.
In the liquid gold era, the era of real estate and stocks, there is a lot of friction. Buying a house costs 6% in fees right off the top. You need a credit check. You need a huge down payment. Buying gold has wider bid-ask spreads. It's hard for a regular person to save in those assets efficiently.
The Bitcoin.
Bitcoin has zero acquisition friction. You can buy $10 worth of it on your phone in 30 seconds. You don't need a bank's permission. You don't need a realtor. You can hold the private keys yourself.
It's permissionless.
It is. And the argument in the sovereign playbook is this. If the government is going to print fiat to build the empire, the citizens should be encouraged to hold the hard asset to protect their wealth.
So the deal, the social contract is this. The government gets the fiat leverage to build the fleets and the orbital infrastructure. The people get the hard asset, the SATs, the smallest unit of Bitcoin, to ride the wave of asset appreciation and protect their savings.
That is the proposed balance. It's an attempt to create a normal distribution of growth where everyone gets to participate in the upside. If the government prints money to fund SpaceX, your Bitcoin goes up. You're hedged against the inflation that the government is creating to build the future.
It's a really populist twist on industrial policy. Instead of just trickle-down economics, it's, I don't know, asset-up economics.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
And if their models are correct, this combination of high-velocity industrial spending and widespread hard asset protection is what leads to that peak 15% growth number around 2030.
It's a staggering vision. It's also incredibly risky, obviously.
The risks are immense. If the technology fails, if the rockets blow up, if for some reason the Bitcoin price crashes and doesn't recover, the whole thing unravels spectacularly. But the alternative, the slow, grinding decline under a mountain of unpayable debt, is a guaranteed failure.
So it's a gamble, but a calculated one, they would argue.
It's a bet on American dynamism and technological superiority.
So let's try to wrap this up. We've gone from a single number, 15%, to orbital mechanics, to monetary theory. What does this all mean when you put it together?
I think we are witnessing the birth of a new era. We are moving from a world where sovereign power was measured in aircraft carriers and oil reserves to a world where it will be measured in two things: orbital compute and digital scarcity.
This sovereign playbook.
It ensures that the technological empire expands into space, solving the energy crisis, solving the AI bottleneck, while the nation itself remains solvent permanently in its digital Fort Knox.
Is this the civilizational upgrade we've been waiting for?
It might just be. It's certainly the most ambitious plan we've seen in our lifetimes, or maybe ever.
Well, that is a lot to chew on. But that's why we do these deep dives. We want to thank you for listening, for being part of this community. Remember, this really is a group effort. Check out the course, hit that subscribe button, and help us build the next phase of this show.
Absolutely. We appreciate all of you.
And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked about space. We talked about Bitcoin. We talked about national debt. But think about this. If we actually succeed in moving our brain, our global compute infrastructure off planet, and we anchor our national wealth in a digital code that no government can print or control, are we even really a nation in the traditional sense anymore? Or are we becoming something else entirely? A networked state, a stellar civilization?
That is the question, isn't it?
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
I'm Satosha.
And I'm Satoshi.